Thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it. Good turnout tonight. My name is David Heck. I'm the organizer, and my company's AppForce here to make a Salesforce plugin that's payment processing for Salesforce. Anyone needs credit cards, ACH for Salesforce comes out. We do this every other month. We do a couple of different demos. I want to thank Paxata for sponsoring tonight. Yeah.
So, Matt Savage from Paxata and Mike White. We do adaptive data preparation. Just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time. As a fun thank you, we're doing a $100 gift card drawing out of the fishbowl tonight as well. So if you want to put your card in there and get one, be a part of the drawing, please feel free. And also, if as part of the meetup, we're providing free evaluations to anyone that's interested after the demo. So a little bit about Paxata is we're an adaptive data preparation solution. So as everyone's here to understand, better ways to do analytics, but as we all know, your analytics is only as good as the data that goes into it. I'm only going to show 3 slides.
Sorry.
Just a quick thing about where we are today.
Oh, okay.
No problem. Why are we here? So we're in Geekdom, San Francisco, which is an extension of Rackspace's Startups program. So Geekdom is a collaborative co-working space. We have about 40 different companies that work out of here. It's a really great space, lots of events. We have events here almost 4 nights a week. You can find out what's coming up at geekdomsf.com and check out our events page. We also have lots of workshops for our members, easy access to industry mentors and partners, and we do demo nights and pitch nights. So it's a really cool space. If you have any questions about it or want a tour or want to learn more about Rackspace, I'll be up at the front desk all night.
Thank you, Whitney.
Thank you.
All right, Matt and Mike, take it away. Thank you.
So great, yeah. So as we were saying, as you all know, your analytics is only as good as your data that goes into your analytics. But the big problem is that in the analytical process, 50 to 70% of your time is spent preparing that data, combining that data from multiple data sources for a couple of reasons. One, you might need IT's help for the advanced solutions that are out there. So that's you have a couple iterations there, or you try to work around that process and use Excel and build VLOOKUPs and whatnot. So Paxata, our mission is to make data preparation for the business analysts. And a couple things that we want you to take out of from this presentation is just, not only can I pull information from Salesforce and cleanse it and standardize it, but I can also combine that information with any other piece of information within my organization, from a relational data source like Oracle or SQL Server. From, if you have a Hadoop environment, we can combine information from there with your Salesforce information. And even if you're in the marketing department here, if you're getting information from a third party to enhance your information, we can combine that as well. But not only do we do the joining of information, we take you through what we call the entire data preparation lifecycle. So not only adding data from multiple sources, being able to cleanse it, standardize it, shape it, and get it ready for analytics. Some of our customers have told us old processes that used to take them a couple weeks now take a couple hours. And we can kind of just blow through these slides and kind of just talk through them. So a couple things as Mike goes through our demo that I want you to think about is, you know, one, not only can I access and work with Salesforce data within Paxata, but I can bring in information from anywhere else. The second thing is we've made it so easy to do with our UI and all the proprietary algorithms behind the scenes. And Excel, if you can use Excel, if you're an Excel power user, you should be able to use Paxata. And that's where we really condense the time to value. Is you don't have to call IT, you don't have to build scripts. And then lastly, you could, you know, once you have that final data set from multiple data sources, you could serve it up to any BI visualization tool that you're using, whether it's Wave from Salesforce or the other solutions out there like Click or Tableau. So with that said, when Mike starts switching to this demo, a funny story is Mike used to work at Ernst Young, and he used to work in data hell, as we call it, doing all the VLOOKUPs, trying to combine information from multiple data sources. And he found Paxata, and we did a demonstration for Mike about, 9 months ago. And he says instead of buying the product, he joined the company. And so that's how we got Mike White, who is doing our demonstration today. And so if any of you, after our demonstration, are interested in joining Paxata, please let us know. It's a fun place to work. It's exciting times, and we feel we're solving real problems. Our customers are real grateful with the time that we're saving them and how easy we're making analytics for them. So, thank you.
That is a true story that Matt just told. Now I'm at my dream job. Very excited to share Paxata with you guys today. So those of you that have been here for the past events, does the resolution look okay to you, or do I need to tweak something? I'm kind of new to the Mac ecosystem, so
I think it looks okay.
let me go to the browser. You can tell me. It looks much better on my Retina display here than what you're seeing out there. It's a beautiful solution, so you'll be able to appreciate it. All right, so what I want to do first is just tell you simply put, Paxata is a data preparation solution that's designed for the business analyst. You won't see scripting or coding or VLOOKUPs or SQL, because all of that is done through a simple user interface. And so as I go through the demo, you'll see how simple it is, and yet underneath what's happening is the SQL and the joining and the cleansing and the normalization and using natural language processing. Some really powerful stuff in a very simple, beautiful user interface. What I want to do first is just emphasize, since you're here at the SFDC Data Analytics Meetup, just emphasize that Paxata can connect to any type of source. It's source agnostic, but we do have native connection directly to Salesforce. And so I just want to demonstrate that here real quick. And I'm already authenticated to Salesforce. So it's authenticated me through, and now I see that I've got access to all the raw tables in Salesforce. And so I'll come to the weeds table. And I see all my fields here. I'm going to bring in all of those. Oh, I should probably name it, call this my SFDC leads as of okay. And I come to a screen where it shows me all of, basically a preview of the first 100 rows and all of the columns. I believe there are about 150 columns here. And I'll finish, and it's as simple as that. So now you see we have the Salesforce icon here. We see the data is brought into the data library. Paxata, the data library, keeps track of all the data sets that come into Paxata's environment and that go out. And I'm actually not going to clean up that Salesforce data because I'm connected to our Salesforce instance. And my coworkers were telling me not to share out that information during the demo, so we're actually going to use some demo data for that purpose. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to create a project here, and I'm going to call this my FY14 Web Campaigns analysis. And I'm going to start off by bringing in my first data set that I begin with, which is I've got some data loaded into the library. Suffice to say, I could connect right to the data wherever it is. It can be on my local machine. It can be on HDFS. It could be stored in a database in Salesforce, as I just demonstrated. But for this demo, it's already loaded in the library. And so I'm going to proceed from here. I've got some data that came in from Hadoop, some web campaigns data. I'm going to bring that into the mix. And here we are, and I'm going to kind of zoom back a little bit so you can appreciate more screen real estate that we're working with here. So right off the bat, you'll notice that Paxata provides a familiar interface, just like Excel. You see your grid of data. And that's really a big differentiator because you're used to working in Excel. And you see all of your data. Paxata helps give you some smart tools to notice where there are data quality issues and take care of them as you notice them. So let me give you an example. Let's start off by exploring this data set a little bit. I'll turn on pattern highlighting and space highlighting. And what that does is it places a visual lens on top of my grid of data to help me see where there are potential data quality issues. It highlights repeating values, potential duplicates. You can kind of see the relationship across the attributes. And let me zoom in here a little bit so you guys can see that better. As I scroll through the data, I can kind of notice where the issues are. If I come over here to the right, my eye's drawn to this column. I see this leading golden bar that tells me I've got a leading white space in this column. So that's kind of a pain in the butt. If you've ever had to do a VLOOKUP or join on a column that's got a leading or trailing white space that's invisible to you, but the computer knows it's there, how do you deal with that? Definitely a very minor thing. But in Paxata, it's really easy to see and take care of. So I'll come to the context menu, where I have a variety of options that help me to clean up, standardize the content in this column. In this case, I just want to trim off the leading and trailing white spaces. What I get is a preview of what I'd be getting if I go forward with this step. So I'll apply that step, and notice two things that happen. Number one, that gold bar is gone, telling me I no longer have leading or trailing white spaces in this column. And number two, the header background color has changed, telling me the raw data in this column is now different. It's been changed. And if I hover over this little icon, you're presented with what we call column lineage. So you have history all the way down to the column with exactly what's happened to your data. All right, so that's a minor thing, no big deal, right? Well, let's start to dig a little bit deeper into the content that we're working with here. So I've got company name, I've got the position information. These are going to be critical attributes for our analysis. But you can notice we've got some blanks, some nulls in here. And I'm only looking at 20 rows so far. So let's take a closer look and generate what we call a filtergram on that column. So a filtergram is our clever way of saying it is a histogram and a filter. Marketing came up with that, awesome. I love it. So we have this filtergram here, and it gives us a really nice view of the distribution of values in that column. This is like your Excel auto filter, but on steroids, because not only do you see it in a nice bar chart type of view, you can sort it based on the number of occurrences, you can do a full text search in it, you also get a nice indicator of sparsity. So if we look at this column, we can see the green represents how much of that column is populated, and the gray represents how much is blank. So I can immediately tell you about 40% of this column is blank. And that's no good for this analysis, because we need that attribute for our analytics. And I can also hover over each of these buttons and tell you exactly how many values are blank versus text. And these buttons also function as filters. So we kind of get a sense that we've got a problem here. One problem is that data sparsity is an issue. The other problem is we're dealing with manually entered data. And so we are going to have problems such as misspellings or different companies typing in their company names different ways. So before I address that issue, the first thing I want to do is pull in some data. In this case, I want to bring in that data from Salesforce.com, my leads data, because I suspect that many of these leads are actually in our CRM system. So what I'm going to do now is come over to the attach menu where I can either append data or I can join it in. I'm going to click on lookup. And that's going to take me to the library where I can now bring in my leads data. here so you can see this review. All right, so while we're talking, within a matter of seconds, Paxata is going to come back and suggest for me the best ways to join this data. So I get the top 5 suggestions, and it gives me a ranked list based on how well the two data sets overlap and match together based on those columns. So let's take a look. We've got last name and first name from that web campaigns data that we started with, to full name from the Salesforce data. Notice that it's encoded in magenta, so you always get this visual feedback. We use colors wherever possible to help you know where the data comes from, sources, when it's changed, things like that. So not only can you do things like composite joins and select different possible joins that Paxata has found for you, you also have the ability to take advantage of some powerful fuzzy join. So if we look at the preview down here of what we're getting, on the left side we see that first name and last name matches up to full name from the right side. So we've got James. Get real close here. And that's the beauty of working within the browser. We've got James and Heinemann matches up to Heinemann, comma, space, James, space. And I make a point to mention the punctuation because, again, if you've ever had to join data in SQL, if you've had to do your VLOOKUP and you've got some extra punctuation, you wouldn't be able to have done that. You'd have to do some pre-processing. You would have had to cut that up, reorder it, maybe concatenate those first two, and then try your VLOOKUP, or do the same thing in SQL. In Paxata, don't waste your time. Just come to Paxata and throw your data in there and let Paxata show you where the possible joins are, and then you, as the analyst that knows your data best, you choose the join you want. In this case, I'm going to go with email as being the best connection to ensure I get the right lead from the right company. Just because with names, there could potentially be people with the same name. So I'm going to go with email as being a better connection. And you see that preview down here. Now look over here on the right. By default, I'm getting a left lookup, or same concept in SQL as a left outer join, which in the vast majority of cases, what we're trying to do in analytics is basically a left join, or this VLOOKUP concept. But suffice to say, you may be a SQL power user, you can do an inner join, you can do a right, you can do a full outer. And notice that you're just clicking on these simple visual icons to do that. You don't have to write SQL. Again, don't waste your time. Come to Paxata. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the left lookup concept here. That's what I want. I just want to bring in the records that match the current data set that I'm working with from Salesforce. So I'll apply that join, and notice what happens here. If I scroll all the way to the left, I have this nice column. It's a metadata column that's been added that shows and keeps track of, for every record, what is the representation across all of my sources. We're only looking at 2 right now, but we have customers that have looked at up to 17 different sources. You can imagine trying to keep track of all the different gaps and matches and mismatches can be a lot easier when you can see visually what is the representation across the sources. The green represents the web campaigns data, and the magenta represents the Salesforce data. So that's nice. That's only 20 records, right? So let's pull up the filtergram. And what most of us are really trying to do is get this type of view, which is, again, a simple bar chart view to show you your join. Basically, all of the rows, 39,000 records that had matched up to the Salesforce data, and then the 3,200 records that didn't. We might want to do white space analysis. We might want to understand how come these didn't match in. I can filter just to those records and do my analysis from there, do some cleanup. In this case, knowing this data, it makes sense. These represent new leads. They're not yet in our CRM system. Okay, so we talked about joining data. We've been able to explore the data, kind of profile it a little bit. So what do we do about the problem of manually entered data? And I'd invite you to think about how you are dealing with this issue right now, because in my background, I dealt with it all the time, and it is very frustrating. So I'm going to pull up company filtergram on the company name from the web campaign side of the data. I'm also going to do the same thing for company name on the Salesforce side. So remember, the issue with this data was sparsity. We've only got 40% that's missing. Well, we've taken care of that sparsity issue now by bringing in the Salesforce data. Notice the green bar is a lot longer now. But like I said, the issue is you still have manual enter data that you're working with. You may have noticed JCPenney is here and right here. So I've got two different variations of JCPenney that I'm looking at. You notice an interesting view you get. Filtergrams also function as cross filters. So you get this really interesting view. When I select the filter here, I see what's the corresponding impact of any other filtergram. So I can actually see the variations that I came from, 7 different variations in my original data. Now I've got 2 here. It's probably more than that. So what do you do now? Well, what I have done is I bring it into Excel, I put some auto filters on there, I sort it, I look for ways that I could then basically copy and paste it to a single normalized value to facilitate my analytics and make it so that in my dashboard I don't have 2 versions of JCPenney, immediately calling into question the validity of the analysis. So what do? Well, use Paxata. So this is another really powerful feature I wanted to make sure that we cover today. Cluster and edit. So this takes advantage of that natural language processing that I was talking about. In a matter of seconds, it scans all the content in the data, and using some different text algorithms like metaphone, and this is a sounds like an English algorithm, Paxata is going to go through all the content and put into clusters similar values based on the fact that they sound the same and therefore could be the same thing. And me, as the analyst, as the human, I look at the data and I see, yeah, that's all JCPenney. And by clicking this, I'm telling Paxata to rename all the different variations to a single cleansed value of JCPenney. And by default, you get the most common occurrence in the data set. So I could select any of these others too, and I could also type in whatever value I want here. And so now I've got 200 clusters here, but it's just a matter of going through and saying, yeah, that's DVDs, that's Kimberly-Clark, that's Walt Disney. Notice I picked up some spelling mistakes in here as well. Qualcomm, Southwest, all these look legitimate, so instead I'm going to select a whole page at a time. And this is a much better way to go about it. And instead, look for where there might be false positives, because of course you can only get so far with machine learning and the natural language processing. And here we go. eBay is not the same thing as A&P, even though this computer might think it sounds the same. So I'm going to deselect that. And I look through, the rest of these look okay. I'll go ahead and prune off this one. And once I'm done, I can go ahead and save that. And in so doing, I'm telling Paxata to take all those different variations and to rename them to the single cleansed standardized value that was on the right side. And now we see we've got 97 different records for JCPenney. If I do a quick search in here on penny, you can see that that in fact was the case, that we cleaned up all the variations. There we go. Just one single JCPenney, all 97 leads associated to it, with it, and we see how far that we've come. You would have had to deal with 7 different variations, and I'd ask you, would you have been able to find all of those? Yeah, if you sorted, probably so, but what if somebody called it the JCPenney, you know, or added an extra letter for, you know, what was in it. Great, so we've been able to clean up that column pretty quickly using cluster and edit. So now what I want to do is bring in yet a third data set, because what I'd like to understand is to be able to do an analysis by industry. So what I'll do is I'll come back to my lookup, and I'll come back to the library and bring in some data that I had brought in from a database. In this case, it's third-party data coming in from Dun & Bradstreet. So I'm going to pull in this data set, and again, you know, I can wait however many seconds it takes to identify all those different joins and go from there. I could also interrupt the join detection if I know better, and I could select which columns that I know match up. And it's funny, now I kind of get impatient. Instead of waiting, you know, 30 seconds, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to set it myself. Remember, I was in a demo once where I was showing somebody this, and I was getting impatient. I was like, I don't want to wait 30 seconds for this. And they're like, well, what you just did, that would have taken me about 2 hours. So. There we go. Company URL and website. Looks like a great connection to me. I'm going to go forward with that. So notice I brought in the third data set. It's blue, maybe purple up there, somewhere in between. And now I've got some extra really valuable attributes like a Fortune 500 flag. I've got the headquarters city, I've got the zip code, I've got industry. That's going to be great for my analysis. Now I'm going to bring one last data set into the mix with the 5 or so minutes that we have left, and that's spend. So far I've got all this data, but I don't know the economic impact of some of our marketing campaigns. So I'm going to bring in yet a 4th data set, and that is going to be my spend information that is loaded in here. Let's go back a little bit. And I'm going to show you a preview before I bring it in, just to make sure that this is what I want. All right, I see I've got my campaign start date and end date. I've got the SEO URL, and then I've got the spend over here on the right. Now, notice what's going on here. I've got spend information split out across 4 columns. Well, that's great if you're doing charting in Excel. But if you're doing analytics in some of the newer HBI tools like Wave and Tableau and Click and Spotfire or whatever, those tools don't like the data in that format. They want a nice denormalized, flattened data set, and they want a single dimension for the fiscal quarter in this case and a single column or measure for the spend. So how do we take care of that issue? Well, you can actually shape it on the fly in Paxata. Let me show you how we do that. And what I'm going to do is come into just the step where we imported it. And you can see how far we've come now. And we'll come back to the step editor in just a moment. That's our history of everything we've done. So we've got the spend here. So how do we go ahead and flatten all that into a single column to make it easy to do our slicing and dicing? So I'll come to the shape mode, and you can see all the different things that you can do here. Dedupe, aggregate, transpose, pivot, and my personal favorite, depivot. That's what we want to do here. We want to take those 4 spend columns, and we want to tell Paxata, put these 4 columns into a single column for me. Show me what that looks like. Yes, that's exactly what I want. And I'm going to actually bring back my other attributes. Campaign start date and end date, SEO URL. And notice that with the pattern highlighting, we actually get a really nice view to validate that this is the format that we want. So what I want to do now is just rename these. This is now my fiscal year quarter and my spend. And I'll hit save, and there we go. We've got the data in the right shape. But as a result of the depivot, and I'll pull up a filtergram to show you what I'm talking about, we've got a bunch of spaces or records that tell us that there was no spend for that campaign. Well, we don't care about that. Let's blow out those rows. So all I have to do is temporarily hide the numeric data so that I'm left with just the blanks in that grid, in that spend column, and just remove them. Notice it was green and gray, and I'll go ahead and remove. And now you can see the whole bar is green, telling me this whole column is populated and it's all numeric. Great, so now we can come back to our project where we did, where we were doing the lookup step and pull in that data that we had already put into the right shape. And the key here is that Paxata is agile. Like the agile BI tools, it's agile data prep. So it doesn't matter really the order that you do things, because you can drag and drop those steps, which I'll show you momentarily, and you can do whatever you need to do. If you make a mistake, you can undo. It's really nice. While this is actually looking through lookups, I'm going to show the step editor here. Or actually, no, let's come back to that. It's done. I'll apply that, and now we've got a 4th data set, and now we've got everything that we need for our analytics, which is to say, we've got our spend information. We also have that flag. We've got the campaign name over here. But you know what? Actually, that's kind of an ugly campaign name, right? How do you read that? Well, the problem here is it's an overloaded column. We need to split that up and make sure that we can get just the piece of information that we want. Again, how are we doing this today in SQL, in Excel, where you're writing equals, trim, open, parenthesis, left, mid, and then you got to remember what's the order of the arguments? I don't know. Let's not waste time for that. Let's use Paxata. So I'm going to put in, I can see my separator is going to be an underscore, so I get a quick preview. And Paxata is going to generate for me however many columns I want as a result of splitting on that separator, which I just tell it, this is how I want you to split up the column. And I know in this case there are 5, so I'll go ahead and jump forward and give it a few seconds and let the grid refresh here. See, again, I'm getting impatient because I've gotten so spoiled with having used Paxata the past 9 months. There we go. We get a nice view that shows that's more like what we want. And we can see with the pattern highlighting, the attributes are starting to come out, and we can see how we can slice and dice it. In this case, what we're seeing here, let me back this up. I know it's a little tricky to see on the monitor. What we see here is the fiscal year, the quarter, it's that region, the channel, and finally the campaign name, which is what we really wanted from this. And I'll go ahead and apply that. And now I can bring up a filtergram on just the campaign name. There's a lot to show, so I want to be cognizant of the time here. Okay, cool. And with the last 2 minutes that we have here, I will bring up just a nice cross-sectional view showing you the spend data, the campaigns, the cleaned up company name that we ran the clustering on earlier. And I'll bring up a flag on the Fortune 500 company because for our analysis, we actually just want to focus on Fortune 500 leads. And so I will select the Y. And notice what happens when I do that. Look at the spend over here. Again, all of the visuals are just to help you prepare your data for analytics, but you might notice some things about your data as you're going along here. There we go. So we see what we get kind of across the board, all the different campaigns associated with the Fortune 500. We see the companies here, but notice how little spend actually that is being applied to the Fortune 500. That's something interesting that we happen to notice in Paxata. Granted, let's spend most of our time in our BI tools. So now that we've got just the data set we want, we've got all the sources that we've brought together, now that we save so much time doing the data prep, let's push it into our BI tools and do the actual analytics. So I'm going to publish out this answer set, we call it, and I'll call this my Fortune 500 leads. And that creates in the library its own data set, which you can then download as a flat file in a variety of formats, or that you can connect to over JDBC or ODBC from any of your BI tools. And while that's loading, I'm going to share with you a dashboard that I created from this data set. There we go. All right, so now that we save so much time on the data prep, this is where we're trying to get, right? We want to load in that single flat file that's got everything that we need to get to this point. And notice now we've been able to clean up the company name, so we're not going to see JCPenney here a couple of different ways. We now have spend information that we introduced, so we can create metrics like cost per lead. We now have the industry information that we pulled in from a third-party data source, and so we can create some nice visuals like this heat map. And remember that campaign type that we pulled out? It's not in that ugly long string format with the underscores. It's just the regular, human-readable version to help really consume, the analytics that you're generating and to be able to really deliver that insight that you get from your BI tools.
Yeah, so we're not just an FYI, we're not a BI visualization. We don't provide the BI visualization. We work with all of them. We just take care of all the data behind it.
And that's our demo. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Do we have any time for Q&A, or should we have it afterwards?
Sure.
If you want to. Any questions on what you saw? Nick.
What's the size of data? Like, how much can I put into Paxata?
Good question.
Essentially, there is no real limit. So if we're talking about our cloud solution, if you want to have that interactive capability that you saw with your data, wait a matter of seconds to join and do those types of things, then well into the tens to hundreds of millions of records. And we're increasing and improving our infrastructure to grow that subsequently.
We have some clients that will be running billions of rows interactively because of the architecture choice.
Can you schedule this?
Scheduling
capabilities?
I have a REST API, which will allow you to do scheduling with your scheduling tools.
Okay.
And we're also introducing into the solution end-user scheduling within the UI as well.
Right.
Yeah, and a nice thing, we didn't go into this too much with their step editor. That's where we track every single step that's on the data. The different way to think about scheduling now is that your business users can define that process.
Right.
Traditionally you have to think of, okay, what are all the steps I want to take? You try to work with IT on scoping that out, and then you test it. With us, since you're working interactively, you set the steps, and one, you get a nice answer set, and two, you can just say, hey, schedule this, and it's already built out, which is really nice.
Does the data become yours? Like, is it on your stuff? Like, if I was like, let's say, like you were at EY, and I wanted to use this maybe in secret of my seniors, because I know it would make my life easier. Can you do that? Or like, you really have to, the company and Paxata really have to be working together and, buy the software?
Well, we have two ways to offer our solution, whether it's in the cloud. So if you don't want to, bring it and support it internally, we'll take care of that for you. But we also, you can also deploy us on premise behind the firewall if that's your question as well. So, so if you don't mind, using the information in the cloud, our cloud solution is fantastic for that. But if you want to work with information that you don't want to deliver to the cloud, we also work on premise.
Can you transfer data the other direction back into Salesforce?
That's a good question. Currently, you could either download as a flat file, and you might be able to facilitate that with the APIs. But right now, there's not an option to export directly into a specific table or something in Salesforce.
Yeah, we output to all the common. It's not a proprietary output for us, which is nice. So, and we connect to other data sources directly, but you can output to a CSV or Excel file if you want to load that back in.
And we actually have, I had actually skipped over this. I said we were going to come back to it. But just because we have a minute or so, the step editor keeps track of everything that we did over the course of this project. And it's really nice if I wanted to rerun these steps against a similar set of data. It's really as simple as going into the edit mode. And for example, maybe I want to run all these steps, but with a different set of campaigns data. So I just come to the step where I started and brought in that 2014 web campaigns data, and literally just swap it out with my, in this case I've got a new year, notice it's 51,000 records. And I'll bring that in and wait for the grid to refresh, and notice the colors change. And we see down here at the bottom 51,000, okay, yeah, there's 51,895 rows. How many columns? That's me. When I did that, again, we support simultaneous user editing. And we bring that in, hit save, and then click on the latest step, and it iterates through and applies all the logic for all the downstream steps automatically to get you back to where we were. And then you can publish that out and go from there.
Can I create net new columns? So, like for example, if I'm bringing in a start date for each customer, let's say CRM data, and I want to create a stage. So if a customer has been with me for 3 months, it's onboarding. If they've been with me for 3 to 12 months, it's expansion. Can I have that type of logic in there to say, hey, create this net new column in this table based on that logic?
Absolutely. And we actually skipped over that just because most of the things that analysts are doing today in Excel, you can do within the UI and point and click interface. But if you want to apply some if logic and things like that, then we provide full expression support and we mirror the syntax of Excel. So you can see some of the different functions that are in here, including some that are specific to Paxata, like hash value, which creates a fuzzified version of that column based on whatever text algorithm you want to use.
Very cool.
Any other questions? Great. Well, thanks for your time, you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good job, guys.
Thank you, Mike. That's very, very cool.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Bob Moore, CEO and founder of RJ Metrics. While Bob's getting set up, we're going to be giving away a $100 Amazon gift card at the end of the night. So if anyone hasn't, anyone last minute business cards, collect a few more. You must be present to win, so you got to stay for Bob's demo. But
Also, we provide free evaluations. So if you're interested in trying it out with data sets and whatnot, we need to set one up for you. So if you're interested at the end, please come see me and we'll talk on setting that up. Thank you. You did all the work.
Rudolph Martin.
thanks everyone for coming. We got the next event May 6th here. So hope to see you all then. Thank you very much.
Ah, is that yours? No. Hi,
I live on. Oh, you do? I go by there. I walk by there all the time. Oh, you do? Good to see you. I'm Chris. I've got a film. Yeah. Yeah. You might already have. That's very good. That's all right. I think it's generally works so much for that.
Anything is interesting. I'm always curious.